Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I am Em, and today we are going to talk about all the things I read in February. I learned a lot when I did my January wrap-up video. I felt like some of the things in that video worked really well for me, and then some of them didn't. So I'm gonna do it a little bit differently this time and see if this structure works better. So we're gonna go over all the nerd things first, all the stats. And then after that, we'll jump into the books, and I have them organized this time from my lowest rating to my highest rating. And we're gonna talk about them in that order. And then that way I get to finish the video talking about the books I'm super excited about, which I think will be fun. Because I don't like leaving off a video with books that I'm lukewarm about. So we're gonna jump in with the stats and my pie graphs that I made, which I'm very excited about. First off, I read 17 books. I'm going to use my journal for reference. I read 17 books, which is more than I wanted to read. I've been trying to keep my reads around 10 books a month because I'm wanting to slow down my reading. And this was a challenging month for me, mentally, and with stuff just going on in my life. And I did a lot more escaping than I had anticipated. So I think that number is a reflection of that. I also think the books I read and the type of books I read are also a big reflection of that. But of the 17 I read, 76% were print, 18% were e, and 6% were audio. And honestly, more of what I read was on audio. I did a lot of immersion reading in February, but there were only 6% where I exclusively did audio. So I discounted the ones that I exclusively did as audio as that. And then of those, I read 35.3% from my library. 5.9% of what I read were advanced reader copies, and 58.8% was from my own shelf. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very proud of myself. Now we get to where I need to do some work. Of the 17 books I read, only 29.4% were by authors of color. Now that's slightly better than last month. Last month, I think it was only 24%, but still not great. I think that's only a difference of maybe like one extra book. So again, room to improve for March. I would like to get that number up. If I could get that number up to the 40s, that would be fantastic. So I had to be a little bit more thoughtful when picking my books. And then finally, of the genres I read, this is where you see that I was doing a lot of escaping. 54.2% were fantasy books. And that's across adult, young adult, middle grade, all the age categories. 16.7% were sci-fi. And 16.7% was also romance. However, I did not read one traditional romance book. Every book I read that fits into a romance category was also something else, whether it was sci-fi romance, fantasy romance, there was something else thrown in. And then 12.5% was nonfiction, which I think that's pretty good for me. I usually only maybe read one, if that. So yeah, it's good. We did some learning this month. Yeah, let's just go ahead and dive in. We're gonna start with the 3-star books. The first one, I don't have a physical copy of it, but it is The Clockmaker's Daughter by C.J. Archer. And this one was fine. Pretty run-of-the-mill, easy to read. I didn't buy the romance, and this was very much the start of a historical mystery series with a heavy romantic element. And I have other series that fit that category that I'm in the middle of, where I am much more invested in the romance, and so I would rather continue on with those series than read this series where I just don't believe the romance, unfortunately. because I love a good mystery. But like, I feel like if I was going to read a historical mystery, like I could reread Veronica Speedwell, or I could continue on with the Lady Sherlock series, or I could continue on with the Anatomist's Wife series. I forget what that one's called, but there's other series that are better than this one, in my opinion. And then the other book that I gave a 3-star to is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. I really thought I was going to love this one more than I did. And I'm sad I didn't love it more. But, you know, we have this really medieval setting. It kind of felt like a D&D world, which I love. But then the language between, because it's first-person narration, so the language between the narrator and then the language that the characters used with each other was super contemporary. And my brain was just being a dick about it. And I couldn't get the two to mesh right. So I spent a lot of time having to do a lot of work to get my brain on board. I think it took me like halfway through the book. So if your brain is less annoying than mine is, this might be a great, fun palate cleanser for you, but it just wasn't quite right for me, sadly. All right, next up, we have the 3.75 star category. Yes, I am obnoxious about how I break up my star ratings, but you know, it's fine. It's fine. It works for me, which is all that matters. Okay, first up is Astoria by Peter Stark. This is nonfiction about the land voyage and ocean voyage to reach where the mouth of the Columbia River exits into the Pacific Ocean. I thought this was really accessible. It didn't feel too academic. It didn't feel dry. There was a lot of drama. There was one point where I really thought we were going to go into a Donner Party situation, and I was real nervous about it, but it was okay. It was dire, but we didn't go that dire, which thank you. And yeah, I think the language in regards to Indigenous populations is outdated in this one. It was written prior to 2015. So take that into consideration if you read this, because that was my biggest critique of this book. Is I felt like it was a really one-sided aspect to this history. Next up is Fire by Kristen Cashore. This is book 2 in the Graceling Realms series, and I don't know if I'm going to keep reading these. I'm doing this. This is part of a series read-along for a Patreon group, and we're supposed to read book 3 in March, and for each book I've read, there have been parts that I've really liked, and then there have been parts that have really not worked for me, and I just don't know, with as chunky as these books are getting, I just don't know if they continue to be worth my time. And I was so close to DNFing this one, but I really wanted to see how it was all going to turn out, and I don't know. She does things I really like, and then she does things that really bug me, and that I think are kind of icky. So I don't know. If you've read this series and you have thoughts on Bitter Blue, let me know. Okay, so here's what I love. I love that she normalizes these young women. Their last 2 books have been like 17, 18, who don't want children or are unable to have children, and they don't want to get married, but they are still finding committed, supportive relationships. Like, I think that's really important to normalize. Like, you don't have to get married to have a lifelong partner if that's what you're wanting. I also like that her characters have sex, and there's no morality attached to it. And it's also sex that's communicated and conveyed in what I feel is a really age-appropriate way. Like, it doesn't feel like sex written for adult readers put into a YA book. But then, like, there's other things. Like, there's a father who makes kind of incestuous comment about his daughter to his daughter. And that was pretty icky. There's also a teen pregnancy that I feel like isn't handled very well. Like I feel like there should have been more discussion about how a 15-year-old should not get pregnant and should not have to be pregnant, because you should not have to be a parent when you are 15 and 16 years old. Like, I feel like, so there's stuff like that that really bothers me. So anyways, I don't know. If you read Bitter Blue, let me know if you think I should keep going or if it's just not worth it and I should just cut. Next up is Bluebird by C.L. Perlot. This is a sci-fi space opera. Is this the best book I've ever read? No. Do I feel like she pulled plot lines from other sci-fi books? Maybe. Was this a good time? Yes. Was this easy to read? Yes. Did I have a hard time putting this down when I picked it up? Also yes. So, not a perfect book, but it was good for what I needed at the time that I read it. There is also some ableist language in here, so if that is hard for you to read past, this is probably not the book for you. All right, and last up for this category is The Broken Kingdoms by M.K. Jemisin. Look, I hate giving Jemisin anything less than a 4 or a 4.5. I want all of her books to be 5 stars, but this one just wasn't. This is book 2 in the Inheritance trilogy. So we skipped ahead 10 years. We also skipped ahead to an almost entirely new cast of characters. And part of the reason I read fantasy and sci-fi series is because I like that after book 1, I know the world and I know the characters, and there's a lot of comfort in coming back to see those people in that place again. And with this one, it felt like I was reading a book 1, except I didn't like the characters as much as I did in the actual book 1 of the series. So it's kind of sad. Sad for me. So we have the books in the 4-star rating. First up is volume 3 in Witch Hat Atelier. Again, this art is just, I mean, isn't this just the most stunning? Also, this relationship friendship gets established in this volume, and it is like oh, so cute. The friendships between the kids in this manga series is so delightfully adorable. It's truly my favorite part, is just watching our main character Coco make friends with the other girls that she's apprenticing with, making friends with this witch boy from the village. It's just so fun. And then the other one in that category is a middle grade. It is Sincerely Cicely by Tamika Burgess. This is contemporary fiction about a American girl who is Afro-Latinx. Her family is from Panama, and just her dealing with people not understanding the difference between race and culture, and Cicely at the beginning not really understanding the difference between race and culture and what that means, and how you can honor both parts of yourself that fit into those different categories, and just friendships, making new friends, keeping those friends, fighting with friends, making up with friends, getting your first crush. Anyways, it was so good. All right, next we are in the 4.5 stars. And first up, oh, this is I think this is the biggest stack. This is the 4.5 stars. I read How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis, and I thought this was a really great format for a self-help book. It's short, it's concise, it's really gentle, and even in this super short book, she even has it broken up to where it's a little bit like a choose your own adventure, where if you have even less time than it would take for this book, she has built in shortcuts. So you'll finish a chapter and there'll be a, in bold at the bottom, it'll be if you're taking the shortcut version, skip to this chapter. And I thought that was great. So super accessible, really gentle, and the audiobook was really good. Next up is volume 2 of Witch Hat Atelier, which this one ended on a cliffhanger. And I was not okay after that cliffhanger. Luckily, I ended everything. I was like kind of fine, but still, I was not okay. I already talked about volume 3, so I feel like I don't have anything new to say about volume 2. And then I also read Pests, How Humans Create Animal Villains. And ooh, this one's shiny. This one's great. I'm finding I really love animal nonfiction, specifically about the relationship between humans and animals and how we can learn to coexist together on this planet. And I learned a lot about some animals I didn't know anything about, and I learned even more about animals where I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what the situation is in regards to how humans interact with them. Yeah, it was good. Audiobook was not my favorite, but it was fine. Last in this category is In the Hands of the Goddess by Tamora Pierce, which is book 2 in the Alana series, and not my favorite. Also had some racist language, which also not my favorite. I'm really hoping that that is not a trend that I continue to see in her books, because I will be doing some reevaluating if I do. This book is 40 years old, almost 40 years old, so I'm trying to take it in the context of that time, which I think is also a really interesting conversation to have right now, especially in regards to Penguin adjusting the language in the James Bond books and in some Roald Dahl books. So we don't have to get into that discussion here, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have. But next up is my lone book that got 4.75 stars, and that is my reread of All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries, and this was just such a fun book to reread. I love Murderbot with my whole heart. I think Murderbot is very relatable if you are an anxious person or a person with anxiety, a person who gets nervous around other humans and doesn't always know how to interact. I think you'll feel very seen by Murderbot. And it's such a quick read. I love it. And yeah, no notes. And then we are at my 5-star reads. These are books that I felt so good after I finished these books. And I was so joyful while reading them, which is really what I'm going for this year. I am looking to feel a lot of joy in the things that I'm reading. And these books all, 5 out of 5 stars for the experience alone, just like not even counting the content of the books. So the first one was book 1 in Alana. This is shiny too. This starts off the Alana series. This is the copy that I had this is not the copy I had as a child. That copy is falling apart. I still have it, but that copy is held together by Scotch tape and, a wish and a prayer. But this is the cover I grew up with, and I love this cover so much. So this was book 1, and this was a purely joyful, nostalgic reread. It's just the best. Next was my reread of Gideon the Ninth. And look at all those tabs. I have decided I am not a tabbed reader unless it is on a reread. But doing it on the 3rd time through was really fun, because then it felt more like I wasn't interrupting the flow of the story, because I knew it was going to happen already. But there's so many layers to this book. Like I read, if you know, I read the pool scene, and while it was still packed a heck of an emotional punch, I took what I took away from that scene was entirely different than what I took away from it the first time or the second time. But it still affected me just as much as it did the first time. So I love that. I love that every time I read this book, I get a little bit something different from it. I understand part of this world a little bit more. I understand different characters' motivations more. And I think that's a sign of a truly brilliant book, where you can read it multiple times and continue to get something new from it every single time. And if you haven't read Gideon and you need somebody to talk you into it, let me know, because I just want everyone to read Gideon. I understand Gideon isn't for everyone. I do. I really do. If Gideon is not your jam, I get it. But like, also, it's my favorite book of all time, and I get it not being for everybody, but it makes me sad that it's not for everybody. We'll just leave it at that. And then I also read Strange Love by Anne Aguirre. This is sci-fi romance, it's alien romance. This was so fun, so creative, so light and frothy, but still, I don't know, still worthwhile, I guess. But like, I don't know that I mean that, because I think light and frothy books are worthwhile too. I don't know. It's just a good time. It's just a good time. And it's a alien romance without a breeding kink and without like being weird. You know? Okay. This book on my list is the book that I am currently not shutting up about in real life. And that is The Adventures of Amina El Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This came out on the 28th of February. I have my finished copy, but my husband is reading it first. And so since I've already read it, and I'm waiting for him to finish before I like move all my tabs. And look, I know I just said with Gideon that I think tabbing works for me when it's a book I've already read before. But in this case, there were so many funny lines. I basically tabbed every time I laughed. This is so funny. If you have read Daevabad, whether or not it worked for you, this is an entirely different tone of book. It is lighter. It is funnier. Our heroine is older. Amina's in her 40s. She's had a child. She has a bad knee. She's gone through things. Like, her approach to the world and her personality and her demeanor are so far removed from Nari, which, don't get me wrong, I love Nari. But I understand that, like, the 19-year-old, is that how old she is? Con artist, who has a lot of feelings, is not going to work for everybody. But I think if Nari didn't work for you, Amina might be a much better fit. Even if Nari did work for you, I think Amina is a lot of fun. I think this book is a great adventure book. Yeah, like a great epic adventure book. I don't even know what to compare it to. I think it's technically considered inspired by Sinbad the Sailor, but I've never read any of the Sinbad stories, so I can't really speak to whether or not that's wholly accurate, but I love this. I think definitely one of my favorite books of the year. If this is not on my favorites list at the end of 2023, I will be shocked. Anyways, okay, so that is everything I read in February. It was a lot. Least favorite book I read, probably, I know it has a higher rating, but it's probably than another one, but it's probably Fire. Just because I struggled with whether or not to keep reading it for so long. So Fire was probably my least favorite. And then my favorite is a tie between Gideon and Amina. I'll probably just say Amina because I've read Gideon so many times at this point. So Amina was my favorite. And yeah, that is this February wrap up. Did we read any of the same things this month or this last month? Because I always think that's kind of fun. And if you want to leave a comment, tell me what your favorite book or least favorite book was this month, or you can do both. If you don't want to leave a comment, but you want to like, I don't know, let me know you were here in some way, shape, or form when we do a book stack emoji. And yeah, thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.